Good morning, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. I am out in Canby, Oregon with George and Bee. You guys want to say hi?
Hello.
We are picking berries today. And the reason that I'm out here is because it's been a really frustrating year for berries in general, particularly our raspberries. I'm going to do an update video, but I have had root rot hit my 14-year-old raspberry patch. And so I've had really terrible harvests this year. And that means for the first time in more than a decade, we are going to a U-pick farm to supplement our raspberries. And also George is picking some Marionberries, and we might pick some Tayberries as well. That is because for us, we eat a tremendous amount of berries in the winter. We tend to freeze them and eat them with cream and shortcake and things like that. We use them in smoothies. They're a significant part of our winter diet. And for us, that's meant that instead of giving up altogether, we decided to go outside of Portland and visit a family-owned farm that does U-pick and give our financial support to them, and also go ahead and stock our freezer. We feel that this is a good use of resources. This is something that's a really important part of our diet, and we didn't want to forego it this year just because we're having hiccups in our own system. So blackberries and raspberries are in the genus Rubus, along with blackcap raspberries and the thimbleberries, and they're very easily distinguishable because they are what is called an aggregate berry. So what you have are a bunch of little tiny drupelets basically, that are all stuck together in an aggregate. So they're not actually a true berry. Notably, also, pineapples are an aggregate fruit. Members of the genus Rubus are all edible. So even though some of them may be kind of bland in flavor or a little bit sour, they are all technically edible. So a couple of tips for going to a U-pick place. You want to make sure that you have adequate sun protection. Berries are grown in full sun. For us, that means sun hats. For my kids, they like to wear sunscreen. I prefer to wear long sleeves and light colors, thin fabric. You also want to make sure that you have water with you. You are going to be working in full sun, so oftentimes it's best to go early in the morning. When you bring your containers, you want to consider bringing ones that have a handle or that are not heavy in general. We tend to use plastic large ice cream containers that then I can just rinse the berries, dry them, and put it right into the freezer. For us, we try and pick, I'm hoping we'll pick at least 20 pounds of berries today. That sounds like a lot, but that is sort of what we need to get through our year. We have 6 people in our family, and so we go through a lot of berries. We're also going to go back for another round of blueberries in a week or two. The raspberry and blueberry season overlap a little bit, but if we wait a couple of weeks, blueberry picking will be even better. Also, when you are going for U-pick, because you are in full sun, think about going first thing in the morning when they open. Think about also going on a weekday if you possibly can. U-pick places tend to get pretty depleted over the weekend. So there's a lot more competition. It's a lot more crowded on the weekend. And then Mondays, they often are closed. It depends on the one, obviously, that you're visiting. But they also are pretty stripped on Monday. So if you go on a Thursday or a Friday, they've kind of had the week to recover from the heavy weekend traffic. And I find the picking is usually best on a Thursday or a Friday, and it's less crowded. So when going to U-pick places, I find that I really love to bring my kids. Usually not all of them want to come with me, but we have a nice time. We tend to pack a lunch, or sometimes we might get lunch out afterward as a treat. When going to U-pick, it's also good to have your kids with you because, as you can see, George is quite a bit shorter than me, and raspberries are produced all up and down, and there's often a lot of good ones down low that you might miss. So I tend to pick up high, Bee's picking in the middle, George is picking down low, and then we're really doing an effective job of getting all of the berries that we need. Another pro tip for when you're picking raspberries is raspberries are much more delicate than blackberries, and obviously far more delicate than blueberries. And so you want to pick them in a container that is quite shallow if you want to preserve the shape of the berry. For me, because this bucket is going to be used for making jam, I don't mind having it be thicker. I know the berries at the bottom will get a little bit squished, and that's totally okay with me because this is going to be crushed and used for jam anyway. But if you want those berries to maintain their shape, think about low flat containers. Blueberries, you obviously could pick in a bucket like this, fill it to the top, and the ones on the bottom won't get crushed, but that's not true for raspberries. So the key difference between blackberries and their relatives and raspberries is that when you pick a blackberry, like this Marionberry here, it keeps its core. When it's ripe, it should come off easily, and its core stays with it. George is picking these. But when you pick a raspberry, like these here, the core stays on the plant and it's hollow, like a little thimble. See? Raspberry, hollow core. Right, George? Blackberry keeps its core. Ooh. So one thing about picking raspberries is that the size does not always indicate superior flavor. It's true for a lot of berries, it's true for blueberries as well. Sometimes the smaller size varieties have a more intense flavor. I notice here there's a couple different varieties, and the ones we're picking right now, can I have one be, are really large. They're really large berries, and they're not quite as flavorful as the smaller ones a few rows over. We're gonna get a mix of them since we're gonna have them for jams and such. Okay, we picked for about an hour and a half, and now we're ready to head home with, I believe it was, let me think in my head here, about 15 pounds of berries. And that will be enough for jam, for a round of raspberry jam, and then frozen berries to get us through baking and or treats and or smoothies in the winter. That will supplement the meager berry harvest we're getting out of our yard this year in terms of raspberries. For us, we're gonna have a lot of June berries. We do have a lot of June berries, a lot of honey berries, a lot of Marionberries in the freezer. But this will help us with the fact that our blueberry harvests and our raspberry harvests look like they're gonna be less than normal. There's nothing wrong with not being able to source everything on your own property. There's no such thing as self-sufficiency. This channel talks a lot, I preach a lot about community interdependence. Self-sufficiency is a myth. There are times that things in our system are going to fail, and our neighbor or someone else in our community, a local producer, will have an ample supply. So it feels good to be able to support a local family farm. It feels good to be able to keep our food source local, even if we can't get it right on our own property. Permaculture does not mean that you produce everything yourself and there is no place for farmers in the system. There absolutely are places for the farmers. One thing to note about the farm here is it is not certified organic, and that's okay with us. To get certified organic, it is twice the cost per pound that it is to come out here. And for us, it's just not in our budget. There's a lot of things about organic certification that don't necessarily mean it is more sustainable. It is much more a marketing gimmick here in the United States. So I appreciated that the family here talks about the sustainable measures that they use and how while they do sometimes employ fungicides, which I would never do on my own property, they try and keep the spraying to a minimum, and they try and use really sustainable practices whenever possible. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Sometimes we have to do the best that we can, even if we can't get every little thing exactly how we want it. For me, supporting a local farmer, being able to source my berries locally and augment my harvest out of my own garden, being able to support someone that is attempting to, as best they can, use sustainable practices, that is what we call good, better, best. It feels like that's a better choice. Can't always make the best choice. It's not always available to me for many reasons, but I can make the better choice whenever possible. So thank you for watching today. I hope you will tune back in. I will be at home in my permaculture garden in the next video. I have lots going on in July. I hope you are staying well and safe, and I'll be back very, very soon.